The morning Lena's life ended, the sky was the color of old bruises. She'd woken before dawn like always, her hands already aching from yesterday's work before they'd even touched the water pump. The homestead her father kept wasn't much. A sagging house with gaps in the floorboards, a barn that listed to one side like a drunk, and 20 acres of stubborn land that fought every seed he put in the ground. Her mother had stopped trying to make it pretty years ago. Now she just moved through the rooms like a ghost, eyes hollow, shoulders bent under the weight of a marriage that had crushed whatever softness she'd once possessed. Lena hauled water from the well, her arms burning. 19 years old and her hands looked 40, calloused, scarred, the nails permanently ringed with dirt no amount of scrubbing would remove. She'd stopped dreaming about dresses and dances the same year she'd started bleeding. Out here, you learned quick that beauty was a liability and softness would get you killed. Lena, her father's voice cut through the morning air. Get in here. She set down the bucket and wiped her hands on her skirt, already stained beyond redemption from 100 such mornings. Daniel Crow stood in the doorway, backlit by the weak light filtering through the kitchen. He was a big man, made bigger by his temper, and Lena had learned young to read the set of his shoulders, the angle of his jaw. This morning, something was different. His face held a strange mixture of resignation and relief that made her stomach twist. "We got company coming," he said. "Clean yourself up." "Who?" "Don't matter who. Just do it." Her mother appeared behind him, small and faded like old fabric left too long in the sun. She held a dress, Lena's only good one, kept wrapped in paper for a wedding or a funeral. "Put this on," she whispered, and her voice cracked on the last word. Lena looked between them. "What's happening?" "Business," her father said. "Ain't your concern till it is. Now move." She moved, not because she wanted to, but because 18 years of her father's fists had taught her that questions led to bruises. She changed in the small room she shared with her two younger sisters, both of them still asleep, tangled together like puppies. The dress smelled like cedar and mothballs. It didn't fit right anymore. Her shoulders had gotten broader from work, her waist narrower. The girl who'd worn this dress to church 3 years ago was someone else entirely. When she came back out, a man was sitting at their table. He was older, maybe 40, maybe more. Hard to tell with men like that, men whose faces had been weathered by sun and work until they became ageless monuments of grit and silence. He wore a shirt that had once been white, rolled to the elbows, revealing forearms roped with muscle and cross-hatched with old scars. His hat sat on the table in front of him, and his hair was dark except for the gray creeping in at the temples. He didn't look at her when she entered, just kept his eyes on her father, patient as stone. "This her?" he asked. "That's her." "Lena, this is Mr. Calder, Rhett Calder, owns the biggest ranch in 3 counties. Lena stood there, hands clasped in front of her, trying to understand. Her father gestured impatiently. "Turn around. Let him see you proper." Something cold slithered down her spine. "Papa, do it." She turned slowly, face burning, hating every second of it. Hating him. Hating the stranger whose eyes she could feel cataloging her like livestock. When she faced forward again, Rhett Calder was looking at her father, not her. "She know how to work?" "Best worker I got. Strong. Don't complain. Does what she's told." "She healthy?" "Healthy as a horse. Ain't never been sick a day in her life." They were talking about her like she wasn't standing right there, like she was a mule or a plow. Lena felt her mother's hand touch her shoulder, light, apologetic, useless. "I got concerns," Rhett said. His voice was low, rough from years of shouting over wind and cattle. "Last girl I brought on didn't last a month. Cried herself sick. Couldn't handle the work. I ain't got patience for that kind of weakness." "Lena ain't weak." Her father leaned forward, and she recognized that look, the same one he got when selling a lame horse, all smooth assurance and strategic truth-bending. "She's been running this place since she was 12, cooking, cleaning, working the animals. She don't break easy. Don't matter how hard she works if she runs off first chance she gets. She won't run. Will you, Lena?" She stared at her father, finally understanding, finally seeing the shape of what was happening. "You're selling me." The words hung in the air like smoke. Daniel Crow's face went hard. "Watch your mouth, girl. This is an arrangement. A good one. Mr. Calder needs help on his ranch, and you need—" I need nothing from him. Her father stood so fast his chair scraped back with a shriek. You need what I tell you you need. You think you got choices here? You think there's some better life waiting for you? Look around, Lena. Look at this place. Look at your mother. You want to end up like her? Working yourself to death on dirt that won't grow nothing, married to a man who can barely keep a roof over your head. Better than being sold like cattle. His hand cracked across her face before she saw it coming. The impact sent her stumbling sideways into the wall, ears ringing, tasting copper. Her mother made a small sound, not quite a cry, just a helpless exhalation of air. Apologize, Daniel said. Right now. Lena touched her lip. It was split, blood on her fingers. She looked at Rhett Calder, expecting what? Shock? Disgust? Some flicker of humanity? He just watched, evaluating, like this was a test and she might be failing it. I don't want to go, she said quietly. Not to her father, to him. Please. Rhett stood. He was tall, taller than her father, broader through the shoulders. He picked up his hat and turned it slowly in his hands. I got a ranch 6 hours north of here, 5,000 acres, 100 head of cattle, give or take, 2 horses, a dozen chickens, 3 dogs. I work sunup to sundown most days, harder in summer, harder still in winter. I need someone who can cook, clean, help with the animals when I'm short-handed. Someone who won't fold when things get rough. He looked at her father, and things get rough. She can handle it, Daniel said. I'm talking to her. Rhett's gaze shifted to Lena. Can you handle it? She wanted to scream, wanted to run, wanted to claw her father's eyes out and burn this whole rotting place to the ground. Instead, she stood there with blood on her chin and her mother's hand trembling on her shoulder and said, Do I have a choice? No. At least he was honest. Then I guess I can handle it. Rhett nodded once. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a roll of bills, more money than Lena had ever seen in one place. He counted out $500 and set it on the table. Her father's eyes gleamed. She brings nothing but what she's wearing, Rhett said. I got everything she needs up at the ranch. We leave in 10 minutes. He walked outside without another word. Lena stood there shaking. Her mother pulled her into a desperate embrace, crushing her against a chest that smelled like lye soap and desperation. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry, baby. But it's better this way. You'll see. You'll have food, shelter. He's a hard man, but he ain't cruel. Not like... She stopped. Couldn't finish. Not like your father, Lena thought. Her sisters had woken up. They watched from the doorway, wide-eyed and silent. 10 years old and 8. Too young to understand, but old enough to be scared. Lena kissed them both, tasting salt. Theirs or hers, she couldn't tell. Be good, she told them. Take care of Mama. Her father stood by the table, already counting his money. He didn't look up when she walked past him. Didn't say goodbye. Just let her go like she'd never been anything more than a burden he'd finally found a buyer for. Outside, Rhett Calder sat on a horse that looked like it had been carved from shadow. Pure black except for one white sock on its rear leg. He had a second horse with him, a roan mare with kind eyes. He gestured to it. You know how to ride? Some? Good enough. She put her foot in the stirrup and hauled herself up. The dress was all wrong for riding, but she managed. Rhett handed her a canteen without comment, then turned his horse north and started moving. Lena looked back once. The homestead was already shrinking behind them, getting smaller and smaller until it was just a dark smudge against the endless Texas scrub. Her mother stood in the doorway, one hand raised. Her father was nowhere to be seen. Probably inside, counting his money again, making sure he'd gotten full price for his daughter. She faced forward and didn't look back again. They rode in silence for the first hour. The land stretched out around them, flat and hostile, dotted with mesquite and prickly pear. The sun climbed higher, turning the air thick and heavy. Sweat soaked through Lena's dress, plastering it to her back. Her thighs ached from gripping the saddle. She hadn't ridden this long in years. Rhett didn't slow down, didn't ask if she needed rest, just kept that steady ground-eating pace that spoke of a man used to covering distance. Lena gritted her teeth and matched him. She'd die before she asked for mercy from this man. Around midday, he finally stopped near a cluster of cottonwoods that offered sparse shade. He swung down from his horse with the easy grace of someone who'd been riding since before he could walk. Lena dismounted too, legs nearly buckling when her feet hit the ground. She caught herself on the saddle, breathing hard. Rhett pulled out a cloth-wrapped bundle and opened it, jerky and hard biscuits. He held it out without a word. She took some, hating that she was hungry, hating that she needed anything from him. They ate in silence. The horses cropped at the tough grass. Somewhere overhead, a hawk screamed. Lena chewed the jerky slowly, trying not to wolf it down. She had no idea when she'd eat again. "Your father said you can cook," Rhett said suddenly. She swallowed. "I can." "How good?" "Good enough nobody's died yet." His mouth twitched. Might have been a smile. Might have been nothing. "What about livestock? You worked with cattle before?" "Chickens mostly. Some goats. We had a cow for a while, but she died." "Cattle are different, meaner, stupider. You'll learn." "Yes, sir." "Don't call me sir, just Rhett." She nodded, not trusting her voice. He studied her for a long moment. "You planning on running?" "Where would I go?" That ain't an answer. Lena met his eyes. They were gray, she realized, like storm clouds. "You paid for me. I'm here. That's all I got to give you." "I didn't buy you," he said, and there was something sharp in his voice. "I paid your father for your labor. There's a difference." "Is there?" "You'll work for me. Room and board, fair treatment. You do your job, you won't have problems, but you ain't property, and I ain't some kind of—" He stopped, jaw tight. "Just get back on the horse." They rode for 4 more hours. The landscape changed gradually. The scrub gave way to rolling grassland, and then to something that might charitably be called hills. Lena's entire body ached. Her hands were blistered from the reins, her back screaming, her legs numb. She'd stopped feeling her feet an hour ago. Just when she thought she might actually fall off the horse and not care, Rhett slowed. "There," he said, pointing. At first she didn't see anything. Then the land seemed to organize itself into shapes: a house, a barn, corrals, outbuildings. The Calder Ranch sat in a shallow valley, protected from the worst of the wind by the hills around it. It was bigger than Lena had expected. The house was 2 stories, built from rough-cut timber with a wide porch that wrapped around the front. The barn was massive, easily 3 times the size of the one her father kept. Behind it, she could see the dark shapes of cattle moving slow across the pasture. It looked solid, permanent, like it had been there forever and would be there long after everything else turned to dust. 5,000 acres, Rhett said, most of it grazing land. Got a creek runs through the north pasture, couple of stock ponds. House was built by my father 30 years ago. Barn's older than that. They rode down into the valley. As they got closer, Lena could see the place needed work. The porch sagged in places. Paint peeled from the window frames. The whole property had the look of something functional but unloved, maintained out of necessity rather than pride. A figure emerged from the barn as they approached. A young man, maybe 17 or 18, tall and lanky with Rhett's dark hair and something softer in his face. He stopped when he saw them, confusion flickering across his features. "Pa?" "Eli." Rhett dismounted, gesturing for Lena to do the same. "This is Lena Crow. She'll be working for us. Lena, my son Eli." Eli looked between them, clearly trying to piece together what was happening. "Working how?" "Cooking, cleaning, whatever needs doing. She'll take the spare room upstairs. But get her bags." "She ain't got bags." Rhett's jaw tightened. "Then show her the room. I got work to do." He walked toward the barn without another word, leaving Lena standing there with this boy who looked as confused as she felt. Eli rubbed the back of his neck, awkward. "I'm sorry, he don't explain things good. Come on, I'll show you inside." The house was dim and cool after the brutal sun. Lena's eyes adjusted slowly to the interior. The main room was large, with a stone fireplace taking up most of one wall. Rough furniture that looked handmade. A table scarred by years of use. Everything was clean but austere, stripped down to pure function. "Kitchen's through there," Eli said, pointing. "Pump's out back. We got a cellar for cold storage. Bedrooms are upstairs. Yours is the first door on the left. Pa's is at the end of the hall. Mine's across from yours." He hesitated, then added quietly, "He ain't a bad man, just hard. Lost my mother 5 years back, and it changed him, made him colder. But he ain't cruel. Long as you work hard and don't cause trouble, you'll be all right." Lena looked at this boy, trying to reassure her, trying to make sense of his father bringing home a strange girl with no explanation. "What happened to the last one?" Eli's face fell. "Mary, she was older, maybe 30. Pa hired her to help out after Ma died. She lasted 3 weeks. Couldn't handle the isolation, I think. Or maybe it was Pa. He expects a lot. Doesn't say thank you, doesn't notice when things go right, only when they go wrong. Mary left in the middle of the night, took one of the horses. We found it wandering 2 days later, but never saw her again." "He go after her?" "No, just said good riddance and that he'd manage on his own." Eli's voice dropped. "We ain't managed well." Lena looked around the house with new eyes, saw the dust in the corners, the dishes stacked haphazard in the kitchen, the floor that hadn't been properly swept in who knew how long. This wasn't a home. It was a shelter, a place to sleep between work and more work. "I should get started then," she said. "You don't want to rest first? That's a long ride from where'd you come from?" "South. And no, I'd rather work." Sitting still meant thinking. Thinking meant feeling. And if she let herself feel right now, she'd shatter into pieces too small to ever put back together. Eli showed her where things were: the pantry, the cleaning supplies, the pump outside that fought you for every drop. Then he left, probably to help his father with whatever work couldn't wait. Lena stood in the kitchen and took a long breath. This was her life now, this house, this man who'd bought her labor like he'd buy a mule, this endless ranch in the middle of nowhere with nothing but cattle and silence for company. She could run, wait until night, steal a horse, and disappear. And go where? She had no money, no family that wanted her, no skills except work, and work she could do here same as anywhere else. At least here she'd have a roof and food. At least here her father couldn't hit her anymore. Small mercies. Lena tied back her hair, rolled up her sleeves, and got to work. By nightfall, she'd scrubbed the kitchen until her hands were raw. She'd swept the main room, beaten the dust from the rugs, washed the windows. She'd found a chicken coop out back with 6 bedraggled hens and collected eggs. In the pantry, she'd discovered flour, lard, some withered potatoes, and precious little else. She made biscuits and fried the eggs, set the table with mismatched plates she'd found in a cupboard. When Rhett and Eli came in, they stopped in the doorway. The house smelled like food, like someone cared whether they ate or starved. Lena stood by the stove, exhausted and filthy, watching them process this small transformation. "Dinner's ready," she said. "Such as it is." They sat. They ate. Rhett didn't say a word, just shoveled food into his mouth with mechanical efficiency. But Eli looked at her across the table and mouthed, "Thank you," when his father wasn't watching. After they finished, Rhett stood. "Breakfast is at 5. Don't be late." He walked upstairs without clearing his plate. Eli helped her clean up, apologizing the whole time. He ain't used to people being nice, doing things without being asked. Don't take it personal. Too late for that. Eli smiled sadly. "Yeah, I figured." That night, Lena lay in a bed that wasn't hers, in a room that smelled like old wood and loneliness, and stared at the ceiling. She could hear Rhett moving around in his room down the hall. Heavy footsteps, the creak of floorboards. Then silence. She didn't cry. She'd learned young that crying was a waste of water and time. Instead, she made a decision. If this was her life now, she'd survive it. The same way she'd survived her father. The same way she'd survived 19 years of barely enough. She'd work harder than Rhett Calder could imagine. She'd make herself so useful he'd forget he'd bought her out of desperation. She'd turn this cold house into something livable, this half-dead ranch into something that thrived. Not for him, for her. Because if she was going to be stuck here anyway, she'd be damned if she'd just survive. She'd prove to everyone, her father, Rhett Calder, herself, that she was worth more than $500 and a dress that didn't fit. She'd show them all what she was made of. And when she was done, they'd never question her worth again. The first week nearly killed her. Lena woke at 4:30 that first morning, disoriented in the darkness, her body screaming from yesterday's ride. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then it all came crashing back, her father's cold eyes, the money on the table, Rhett Calder's gray stare evaluating her like merchandise. She dressed in the dark and made her way downstairs. The house was silent except for the settling sounds old wood makes in the pre-dawn cold. She found the kitchen by feel, located matches, lit the lamp. The yellow light pushed back the shadows but couldn't touch the loneliness that seemed to seep from the very walls. 5 o'clock, Rhett had said. She had 30 minutes. She had 30. She built up the fire in the stove, working quickly despite her blistered hands. Found the coffee, strong and bitter enough to strip paint. Put water on to boil. There wasn't much in the pantry. Whoever had been shopping didn't believe in variety. Flour, lard, some preserved meat that looked like it had seen better days, a sack of beans. She made do, mixing up cornmeal mush and frying the last of yesterday's eggs. Rhett came down at 5 exactly, Eli trailing behind him, rubbing sleep from his eyes. They sat without speaking. Lena served the food and stood by the stove, uncertain. "You gonna eat, or just watch us?" Rhett asked, not looking up. She sat. They ate in silence so thick she could have cut it with a knife. When Rhett finished, he pushed back from the table and looked at her directly for the first time since they'd arrived. "Today you'll clean the house top to bottom, all of it. Tomorrow we'll see about getting you some proper clothes. That dress ain't gonna last a week out here. Eli will show you where everything is. You got questions, ask him. I'll be in the north pasture checking fence line." "Yes, sir." Rhett. He nodded once and walked out, boots heavy on the floorboards. The door shut behind him with a finality that made Lena's chest tight. Eli cleared his throat. "He ain't much for conversation before coffee, or after coffee, really. Don't take it personal." "Does he take anything personal?" "Not that I've seen." Eli started gathering plates. "Here, I'll help you clean up, then I'll show you around proper. Pa don't like mess, but he also don't like waiting, so we better move quick." They washed dishes in water Lena had to pump and heat herself, a process that took 20 minutes and left her arms aching. Eli talked while they worked, filling the silence his father left behind. "Ranch has been in our family since my grandfather built it. He came from back east somewhere, thought he'd make his fortune in cattle. Did all right for himself until a bad winter in '72 killed half the herd. Pa took over when Grandpa died, been running it ever since. Ma helped when she was alive. She was better with the books than Pa ever was. Kept everything organized. After she passed, things got..." He trailed off, staring out the window at nothing. "Harder?" Lena supplied. "Meaner. Like the ranch itself turned bitter. Pa worked twice as hard, slept half as much. Stopped talking except to give orders. I tried to help, but I was only 13, didn't know half what I needed to know. We lost cattle that first year, lost money, almost lost the whole place." He shook his head. "That's when Pa got desperate enough to hire Mary, and now you." Lena scrubbed a plate clean, watching the grease swirl away in the gray water. "Your father loved her. Your mother. More than breathing. Ma used to say he was like a tree that had grown around her. Couldn't stand up straight without her there. When she died, I think part of him died too. The good part." They finished the dishes in silence after that. Eli showed her the rest of the house, the parlor that nobody used, the room that had been his mother's sewing room and was now just storage, the upstairs bedrooms including Rhett's, which Eli specifically told her never to enter unless told to. The whole place had the feeling of a museum, everything preserved, but nothing living. "You'll want to start with the floors," Eli said. "Pa can't stand dirt tracked through. Then the windows. Ma always said a house needs light. After that, whatever you think needs doing." He left to help his father, and Lena got to work. She scrubbed floors on her hands and knees until her back felt like it would snap. Washed windows until her reflection stared back at her from glass so clean it looked like there was nothing there at all. Beat rugs until clouds of dust made her cough. Swept, wiped, scoured, polished. By noon, her hands were bleeding from new blisters layered on top of yesterday's. She wrapped them in strips torn from the hem of her dress and kept going. The house fought her. Years of neglect don't surrender easy. But Lena had been fighting her whole life, and she was too stubborn to lose to inanimate objects. Around 2, Eli came back with a bucket of milk and found her standing on a chair trying to reach cobwebs in the corners of the parlor ceiling. "Holy hell," he said, looking around. "You did all this today?" "Most of it. Still got the upstairs to finish." "Pa's gonna... I don't even know. I ain't never seen this place look like this." He set down the milk. "You gotta eat something and rest. You're shaking." She was. She climbed down from the chair on legs that felt like water and let Eli make her sit at the kitchen table. He found bread and cheese, poured her milk still warm from the cow. She ate mechanically, tasting nothing. "Why are you being nice to me?" she asked. Eli looked surprised. "Why wouldn't I be? Your father paid for me. Far as he's concerned, I'm just labor he bought. You could treat me the same." "I could," Eli agreed, "but I ain't my father, and you ain't labor. You're a person. A person who got a raw deal and is making the best of it. Least I can do is be decent." Lena felt something crack in her chest. She'd been holding herself together through sheer force of will, but kindness was harder to defend against than cruelty. She looked down at her plate, blinking hard. "Thank you," she managed. "Don't mention it." Eli stood, awkward with her gratitude. "I gotta get back before Pa wonders where I went. But Lena, you don't have to kill yourself trying to impress him. He ain't gonna notice anyway." He was wrong about that. Rhett came in at sundown, covered in dust and smelling like cattle and sweat. He stopped in the doorway of the parlor and just stared. The room gleamed. The windows caught the last of the daylight and threw it back in gold. The furniture looked almost new. The floor you could eat off. He didn't say anything, just walked through to the kitchen where Lena had dinner waiting, beans and cornbread, nothing fancy but hot and filling. He sat. He ate. When he finished, he looked at her. "You do all that today?" "Yes." "By yourself?" "Eli helped some." Rhett grunted, stood, walked to the door, stopped with his hand on the frame. "It's good work," he said, not turning around. "Keep it up." Then he was gone, leaving Lena sitting there with those 3 words echoing in her head. It's good work. From a man like Rhett Calder, that was practically poetry. Eli grinned at her from across the table. "Told you he'd notice." The days blurred together after that, each one the same brutal routine. Up before dawn, make breakfast, clean whatever needed cleaning, make lunch, do laundry or mending or whatever other task presented itself. Make dinner, collapse into bed. Her hands stopped bleeding after the first week, but the calluses grew thicker. Her back adapted to the constant bending and lifting. Her body hardened, muscle replacing whatever softness she'd had left. Rhett barely spoke to her. He'd give orders in the morning, fix this, clean that, we need more firewood, and she'd do it. Sometimes he'd grunt approval. More often he'd say nothing at all. But she noticed things. How he started eating more, like food tasted better when it wasn't half burned. How he stopped tracking mud through the house after the first time she'd scrubbed the floors. Small changes, small victories. Eli became her lifeline. He'd sneak her extra food when his father wasn't looking, show her shortcuts for hauling water, teach her about the ranch, which cattle were mean, which pastures flooded in rain, where the good fishing hole was, even though there was never time for fishing. He talked to fill the silence his father created, and Lena found herself talking back, telling him about her sisters, her mother, carefully avoiding mention of her father. "You miss them?" Eli asked one afternoon while they were hanging laundry. "My sisters, yeah. My mother too, though I don't know if she misses me. She stopped fighting a long time ago, just gave up. Let life happen to her instead of trying to change it." "And your father?" Lena clipped a sheet to the line with more force than necessary. "I don't miss him at all." Eli nodded, understanding in a way that made her wonder what Rhett had been like after his wife died. If grief had made him cold, or if something harder, darker, had always lived in him. 2 weeks in, Rhett came back from town with a package. He dropped it on the kitchen table in front of Lena. "For you," he said. Inside were 2 dresses, simple, sturdy, made for work, not show. A pair of boots, a coat. Lena stared at them, throat tight. "I can't pay you back," she said. "Ain't asking you to. Can't have you working in rags. Bad for the ranch's reputation." He said it gruff, matter of fact, but Lena saw past that now. Saw the awkward generosity of a man who didn't know how to be kind without making it transactional. She touched the fabric of the dress, rough cotton, dark blue, nothing fancy, but new, clean. Hers. "Thank you," she said. Rhett shifted, uncomfortable with gratitude. "Just don't ruin 'em doing something stupid." That night she tried on the dresses in her room. They fit well enough, a little loose in places, a little tight in others, but worlds better than the one she'd arrived in. She looked at herself in the small mirror Eli had found for her and barely recognized the girl looking back. Thinner, harder. sun-darkened skin and eyes that had seen too much too fast, but still standing. The third week, Rhett started teaching her about the cattle. "You're going to help with the feeding," he announced one morning. "Eli's got other work and I can't do it all myself." He showed her how to handle the heavy bales of hay, how to break them apart and distribute them without getting trampled. The cattle were huge, stupid, and mean. They'd push and shove and step on her feet if she wasn't careful. One particularly nasty cow, Rhett called her Jezebel, tried to butt Lena into the fence on her second day. "Get mean right back," Rhett said, watching. "Show her who's boss." Lena grabbed a stick and smacked Jezebel on the nose. The cow bellowed and backed off, glaring with those dull brown eyes. Rhett almost smiled. "Good. You're learning." After that, he started giving her more responsibility. Showed her how to check fence line, how to spot when cattle were sick, how to rope a calf that needed doctoring. She was terrible at first, slow, clumsy, scared. But she kept trying, kept pushing, because quitting meant letting him win, and she'd be damned if she let him win. One morning, a month in, she was hauling water from the pump when she heard shouting from the barn. She dropped the bucket and ran. Rhett was on the ground, blood streaming from a gash on his forehead. One of the horses, a mean-tempered gelding they'd been trying to break, stood over him, wild-eyed and snorting. Eli was frozen by the stall door, too scared to move. Lena didn't think. She grabbed a rope from the wall and snapped it at the horse, yelling. The gelding reared, hooves flashing. She held her ground, cracking the rope like a whip. The horse came down hard but backed off, giving her space to get between it and Rhett. "Get your father out of here," she told Eli, never taking her eyes off the horse. Eli dragged Rhett backward toward the door. The gelding watched them go, muscles quivering. Lena backed up slowly, keeping herself between the horse and the men. When they were clear, she slipped out and slammed the stall door shut. Her hands were shaking. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. Rhett was sitting against the barn wall, Eli pressing a cloth to his head. When he saw Lena, something shifted in his expression, not quite gratitude, more like reassessment. "That was stupid," he said. "You're welcome. Could have gotten yourself killed." "Could have, didn't. You need stitches." He touched the wound, winced. "Probably." Lena knelt beside him, pulling the cloth away to look. The gash was deep but clean. "Eli, get me hot water, clean bandages, and whiskey. The drinking kind, not the cleaning kind." "We ain't got a doctor," Rhett said. "Nearest one's in town, 4 hours out." "Then I guess I'm sewing you up myself, unless you want to bleed out in your own barn." "You know how to do that?" "Sewed up my father more times than I can count, usually after he'd gotten drunk and done something stupid. Figure it can't be much different." Rhett studied her, then nodded. "All right." Eli brought the supplies. Lena cleaned the wound, poured whiskey over it and over the needle she'd threaded with fishing line. Rhett hissed, but didn't pull away. "This is going to hurt," she said. "Everything hurts. Get on with it." She sewed. Her hands were steady despite everything. Rhett sat still as stone, jaw clenched, breathing controlled. When she finished and tied off the thread, he looked at her with something approaching respect. "Where'd you learn to do that without flinching?" When you grow up cleaning up after someone else's mistakes, you learn not to flinch at much. "Your father? Not a good man." "No," Rhett agreed quietly. "I expect not." It was the first real conversation they'd had. The first time he'd looked at her and seen something more than just labor he'd paid for. Lena sat back on her heels, suddenly exhausted. "You should rest," she said. "That gelding rattled your brain pretty good." "Ranch doesn't stop for rattled brains." "It does today. Eli and I can handle it." Rhett looked like he wanted to argue, but the blood loss and the blow to his head were catching up with him. He let Eli help him into the house, let Lena settle him in a chair with water and orders to stay put. She went back outside to finish the work he'd started. That evening, Rhett watched her move around the kitchen making dinner. She could feel his eyes on her, evaluating. When she set his plate down, he caught her wrist. His grip was firm but not painful. "You could have let that horse finish me," he said. "Would have solved your problem real neat." Lena met his gaze. "What problem is that?" "Being stuck here. With me. You could have run off, no one to stop you." "And go where?" She pulled her wrist free gently. "I already told you. I ain't got nowhere else to be. Good or bad, this is my life now. Might as well make sure you live through it." Something like a smile ghosted across his face. Practical. Someone has to be. After dinner, Rhett didn't immediately disappear to his room like usual. He sat at the table while Lena cleaned up, nursing a cup of coffee. Eli had already gone up to bed, leaving them alone in the kitchen's lamplight. "You're tougher than you look," Rhett said finally. "Most people would have broken by now. Most people haven't had my life." "That bad?" "Bad enough." She scrubbed a pot clean, not looking at him. "My father wasn't much for kindness. Believed children were for working and wives were for bearing them. My mother stopped arguing with him before I could remember. Just took it, took everything. I swore I'd never be like her." "You ain't." The words hung between them. Lena set down the pot, turned to face him. "Why'd you really bring me here? There's gotta be easier ways to get help." Rhett took a long drink of coffee. "Eli said you needed saving. I said I ain't in the saving business. But I needed help, and your father needed money, and sometimes that's all it takes for a deal to get made." "That simple?" "Nothing's ever simple. But yeah, that was most of it." He paused. "And maybe I was curious." "About what?" "Whether someone dealt the hand you got dealt would fold or play it out." Lena felt anger spark in her chest. "So I'm what? Some kind of experiment?" "No, you're—" He stopped. Started again. "My wife used to say people were like trees. The ones that grow in good soil get tall and straight, but the ones that grow in rocks and hard ground, those grow twisted and tough. Can't kill 'em easy. They last." His eyes met hers. "You're the second kind." It wasn't a compliment. Wasn't an insult either. Just observation, flat and honest. "Your wife sounds like she was smart," Lena said. "She was. Too smart to marry me, probably, but she did it anyway." Something old and painful moved behind his eyes. "Lost her to fever. Came on quick. Took her quicker. 1 week she was fine. The next she was gone. Left me with a son I didn't know how to talk to and a ranch I didn't know how to run without her." "But you kept going." "What else was I going to do? Land doesn't care if you're grieving. Cattle don't care. Work still needed doing. So I did it." Lena understood that. Understood how work could be the only thing holding you together when everything else fell apart. "That's why you're so hard on Eli. You don't know how to be anything else." "Maybe. Or maybe I'm just hard. My father was hard. His father before him. We're not soft people, the Calders. Can't afford to be." "There's a difference between hard and mean." "Is there?" He stood, carrying his cup to the basin. "Sometimes I ain't so sure." He walked to the doorway, stopped. "You did good today. With the horse. With this." He touched the bandage on his head. "I ain't forget it." Then he was gone, boots heavy on the stairs. Lena stood in the empty kitchen, listening to the house settle around her. Something had shifted today. Some wall between them had developed a crack. She didn't know if that was good or bad. Didn't know if she should push on that crack or let it be. But she felt it. The first sign that maybe, Rhett Calder was more than just the cold, hard man he pretended to be. The next few weeks tested that theory. Rhett started teaching her more. Not just the basic work, but ranch work. How to ride fence line properly. How to spot water sources from the land's shape. How to read weather coming 3 days out by watching the sky and the animals. He was a harsh teacher, impatient with mistakes, generous with criticism. But he was teaching her, trusting her with knowledge that mattered. Eli noticed the change too. "He's different with you," he said one afternoon while they were mending fence. "Different how?" "Talks more." "Well, talks at all. With Ma, he used to smile sometimes, laugh even. After she died, I thought I'd never hear him laugh again. He ain't laughing now, but he ain't as absent, like part of him came back." Lena hammered a nail home, testing the repair. "Don't read too much into it. I'm just convenient. Someone to boss around who won't leave in the middle of the night. If that's what you gotta tell yourself." Eli grinned. "But I seen how he looks at you when you ain't watching." "And how's that?" "Like he's trying to figure out a puzzle. Like you don't make sense to him, but he wants to understand anyway." Lena didn't know what to do with that information, so she filed it away and kept working. 2 months in, everything changed again. A storm rolled in fast and mean, the kind that turns day to night and tears at anything not nailed down. They'd been out checking the cattle when the sky went green. Rhett took one look and swore. We got to get 'em to the south pasture, now. If this turns into a twister, they'll scatter to hell and back. They worked in controlled chaos, driving the cattle toward shelter while the wind picked up and the first drops of rain hit like thrown stones. Lena rode hard, pushing the stragglers, her horse fighting the bit as the storm grew. Lightning cracked close enough to make her hair stand up. "Get to the barn!" Rhett shouted over the wind. "We can't do more!" They rode hell-bent for the ranch. Rain coming down so hard Lena could barely see. The barn loomed out of the darkness. They got the horses inside, dripping and wild-eyed. Eli appeared from nowhere, soaked through. "House is secure," he yelled. "Checked all the windows." "Good boy," Rhett clapped his shoulder. "Now get inside before you blow away." They ran for the house, bent double against the wind. Made it through the door just as something heavy slammed into the side of the barn. Inside, the house shuddered and creaked like a ship in rough seas. Lena had never heard wind like this, alive, hungry, trying to tear everything apart. They huddled in the main room, away from the windows. The storm raged for hours. When it finally passed, the silence it left behind felt wrong. They stepped outside into destruction. The barn had lost part of its roof. The chicken coop was gone entirely, chickens scattered everywhere. Fence line down in a dozen places. One of the smaller sheds just gone, vanished like it had never existed. Rhett stood looking at it all, face blank. Then he turned and walked toward the pastures without a word. Lena and Eli spent the day rounding up chickens, checking for injured animals, starting the cleanup. When Rhett came back at dark, his face was stone. "Lost 12 head, he said. "Found 'em in the creek bed. Drowned or broke their necks trying to run." 12 cattle. Lena did the math quick. That was serious money. Maybe enough to break them. "We'll manage," she said. "We always do." Rhett looked at her. "We?" She hadn't meant to say that, hadn't meant to claim ownership of this place's problems. But it was too late to take it back. "Yeah, You think I put 2 months of work into this place just to watch it fall apart now?" Something happened to Rhett's face. The stone cracked. Just for a second, she saw the man underneath, tired, scared, grateful. Then it was gone. "Better get some rest," he said roughly. "Tomorrow we rebuild." They rebuilt. It took weeks. Every spare moment went to fixing fence, patching the barn, replacing what was lost. They worked until they couldn't see straight, then got up and did it again. Lena's hands bled again from handling wire and wood. Her back screamed. But she didn't complain. Neither did Eli. They just worked together like a machine built from stubbornness and shared suffering. One night, bone-deep exhausted, Lena came inside to find Rhett sitting at the kitchen table with a bottle. Not drunk, but working on it. "Rough day?" she asked. "They're all rough." He poured whiskey into a cup, slid it across to her. "Drink. You earned it." She'd never had whiskey before. It burned going down, harsh and mean. She coughed. Rhett almost smiled. "Gets easier," he said. They sat in silence, passing the bottle. Outside, night pressed against the windows. Somewhere, a coyote called, lonely and distant. "I'm sorry," Rhett said suddenly, "for how this all started, for everything. You deserved better." Lena looked at him, surprised. Rhett Calder didn't apologize, didn't acknowledge weakness. But here he was, whiskey honest and raw. "Maybe," she said, "but I got this instead, and this ain't so bad. Some days." "Some days," he agreed. He studied her across the table. "You ever regret it, staying?" "Every morning when the rooster crows." She took another drink, letting the burn settle. "But then I remember what I left behind and figure this is better. Least here I got a choice in how I suffer." Rhett laughed. Actually laughed. A short, rough sound like he'd forgotten how. That's a hell of a way to look at it. "It's the truth." "Yeah." He stood, steadier than she expected. "Yeah, I guess it is. Get some sleep, Lena. Tomorrow's another long one." She watched him go, listened to his footsteps fade upstairs. The house creaked around her, settling. She finished the whiskey in her cup, feeling the warmth spread through her chest. Something had changed tonight. Something had shifted in the foundation of whatever this arrangement was. She couldn't name it. Didn't want to, maybe. But she felt it. And for the first time since her father had sold her like livestock, Lena thought maybe, just maybe, She'd found something worth fighting for. Winter came early that year, hard and mean like everything else on the ranch. Lena woke one November morning to frost thick on the windows and her breath fogging in the air. Downstairs, the fire had died overnight. She built it back up with numb fingers, watching the flames catch and spread while the cold tried to leach the warmth right back out of the room. Rhett came down bundled in a heavy coat she hadn't seen before, his face already set for the day's misery. "Going to be a bad one," he said, peering out at the white-gray sky. "Can feel it in my bones." "Your bones ever wrong?" "Not yet." He accepted the coffee she poured, wrapping both hands around the cup. "We need to move the cattle closer to the barn. Get them near shelter before the real cold hits, and we're going to need more firewood, a lot more." They spent the next 3 days in brutal preparation. Lena learned what real cold felt like, the kind that bit through every layer you wore and settled in your marrow. They hauled wood until her arms gave out, then hauled more, reinforced the barn walls with whatever scraps they could find, moved the cattle in shifts, fighting animals that didn't want to go where they were told. Eli caught a cold on the second day. By the third, he was coughing so hard he could barely stand. Rhett sent him to bed over his protests. "You're no good to me dead," Rhett told him flatly. "Stay inside, keep warm. Lena and I can handle it." So it was just the two of them in the biting wind, working shoulder to shoulder to get everything secured. Lena's face felt like carved ice. Her feet lost feeling around noon and never came back. But she kept moving because stopping meant freezing, and freezing meant dying. They came in at dark, barely able to move. Rhett slumped in a chair while Lena made soup from the last of the preserved vegetables and some tough beef. Her hands shook so bad she could barely hold the knife. "Here," Rhett said, standing behind her. He took the knife, set it aside, then wrapped his hands around hers. They were rough and warm and absolutely enormous. "You gotta warm them slow or you'll damage something permanent." She stood very still, acutely aware of how close he was. Close enough to smell leather and smoke and sweat. Close enough to feel the heat coming off him like a stove. "Better?" he asked after a minute. "Yeah," her voice came out rough. "Thanks." He stepped back and the cold rushed in to fill the space he'd left. Lena finished making dinner, hyper-aware of him watching from the table. They ate in silence, too tired for conversation. Upstairs, Eli's coughing echoed through the floorboards. "I should check on him," Lena said. "I'll do it. You've done enough today." But they both went. Eli was curled under every blanket in the house, shivering despite the fire Rhett had built in his room. His face was flushed, eyes too bright. "Just a cold," he managed between coughs. "I'm fine." "You look like death," Rhett said, but his hand on Eli's forehead was gentle. "Burning up." "Lena, we got any of that fever medicine left?" "Some. I'll make tea." She went down to brew willow bark tea, the same remedy her mother had used for fevers. When she brought it up, Rhett was sitting on the edge of Eli's bed, looking more helpless than she'd ever seen him. "I don't know what to do," he admitted quietly. "If this gets worse..." "It won't. It's just a cold. We'll keep him warm, keep fluids in him, and he'll be fine in a few days." "You sure?" "No, but worrying won't help him any." Rhett looked at her, something complicated moving behind his eyes. "You're good at this. Taking care of people. Had practice." They took turns sitting with Eli through the night. Lena dozed in the chair by his bed, waking every time he coughed. Around 3 in the morning, Rhett appeared with fresh tea and took over the watch. "Sleep," he told her. "Real sleep. I got him." She went to her room but couldn't settle, kept listening for sounds from down the hall. Finally gave up and went back. Rhett was still there, slouched in the chair, one hand resting on Eli's shoulder like he needed the physical proof his son was still breathing. "Thought I told you to sleep," he said without looking up. "Can't. Too worried." "About Eli or about tomorrow's work?" "Both." She sat on the floor back against the wall. "Mostly Eli, though. He's a good kid. Doesn't deserve to be sick." "Nobody deserves it, but it happens anyway." Rhett's voice was rough with exhaustion. His mother used to sit with him just like this when he was small, sing to him. I can't sing worth a damn, but she could make anything sound pretty. "What was she like?" "Your wife." Rhett was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "Strong. Stronger than me in all the ways that mattered. She could look at a broken thing and see how to fix it. Could look at a mean horse or a stubborn man and find the softness underneath. He rubbed his face. She made this place feel like a home instead of just a prison with a roof. When she died, the home died with her, just left the prison behind. Is that how you see it? As a prison? Sometimes. Other times, it's the only thing keeping me sane. Work gives you a reason to get up, gives you purpose when everything else is gone. He looked at her finally. You understand that. I can see it in you. Lena pulled her knees to her chest. My mother used to say work was prayer, that if you couldn't find meaning anywhere else, you could find it in your hands doing something useful. I think she was trying to convince herself her life mattered. Did it work? No, she's still there, still miserable, still trapped. But at least she's got clean floors. The bitterness in her voice surprised even her. I swore I'd never end up like that. Never let myself get so beaten down I stopped fighting. You haven't. Haven't I? I'm here, aren't I? Doing exactly what I'm told. Working myself to death for a man who paid for me like livestock. Rhett flinched. That ain't fair. Isn't it? Tell me how it's different. Because you got a choice now. You could leave tomorrow if you wanted. I wouldn't stop you. Lena laughed, short and sharp. And go where? With what money? What skills besides work? You bought my labor, Rhett, but you also bought my options. Same thing in the end. So why stay? The question hung between them. Lena didn't have a good answer. Or rather, she had too many answers, and none of them made sense. Because leaving meant admitting defeat. Because Eli needed her. Because the ranch had gotten under her skin somehow, this hard land and harder work. Because Rhett Calder was broken in ways that made sense to her, and maybe, she wanted to see if broken things could be fixed. I don't know, she said finally. Stubbornness, probably. That's as good a reason as any. Eli stirred, coughing. They both moved to help him sit up, get water down his throat. His fever had broken sometime in the night. He was soaked with sweat, but cooler to the touch. Think he's past the worst of it, Rhett said, relief naked in his voice. They stayed until dawn started graying the windows. Eli slept peacefully finally, color better, breathing easier. Rhett stood stiffly, joints creaking. I'm getting too old for this, he muttered. You're not old. Feel it some days. He looked at her. Thank you for helping with him, for everything. I know I don't say it enough. You don't say it at all. Well, I'm saying it now. Thank you, Lena. Her name in his mouth sounded different than when other people said it, weighted with something she couldn't identify. She nodded, not trusting her voice, and went downstairs to start breakfast. The snow started that afternoon. It came down soft at first, pretty almost. By evening, it was coming down in sheets, wind howling, the world disappearing into white. They brought the horses into the barn, secured everything that could blow away, and hunkered down to wait it out. The storm lasted 3 days. 3 days trapped inside with nothing to do but keep the fire fed and try not to go crazy from cabin fever. Eli recovered slowly, still weak but out of danger. Lena cooked, cleaned, mended clothes by lamplight. Rhett paced like a caged animal, worried about the cattle, the fences, everything they couldn't see or fix. On the second day, the chimney started smoking wrong. Rhett went up on the roof and the blinding snow to clear it came back down half frozen and cursing. Lena made him strip to the waist by the fire, checking for frostbite. His back was a map of old scars, some from work, some from things she didn't want to imagine. You could have died up there, she said, running her hands over his ribs, checking for damage. Could have died down here if I didn't fix it. He caught her wrist when she found a particularly bad bruise forming. I'm fine, stop fussing. Someone has to. You sure as hell won't do it yourself. Fussing's what wives do. You ain't my wife. The words stung more than they should have. Lena pulled back. No, I'm just the help. How could I forget? She started to stand, but Rhett held her wrist. I didn't mean it like that. How did you mean it? I don't know. Hell. He let go, scrubbed his hands through his hair. I ain't good with words, never have been. But you're not just help, Lena. He stopped, started again. You're important. To this place, to Eli, to... Another stop. Just important, all right? To you? He looked at her, really looked at her, and something in his face made her chest tight. Yeah, he said quietly. to me. The fire crackled. Outside wind shrieked around the corners of the house. They sat there, inches apart, the weight of things unsaid pressing down on them both. Rhett, don't. He stood abruptly. Don't say whatever you're about to say. It'll just complicate things. Things are already complicated. Then let's not make them worse. He grabbed his shirt, pulled it on. I'm going to check on Eli. He left. Lena sat by the fire, staring into the flames, trying to make sense of what had just happened, trying to ignore the part of her that wanted to follow him, wanted to push past that wall he kept building between them and see what was on the other side. But he was right. Complicating things would only make everything harder. So she stayed where she was and let the moment pass. The storm broke on the third day. They dug their way out into a world transformed. Snow everywhere, drifted high against the buildings, the land buried under white. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time. They found 2 cattle dead, frozen where they'd huddled together for warmth. Lost some chickens, too. But most of the animals had survived. Most of the fences had held. It could have been worse. They worked like dogs to dig out, to get things functioning again. Lena's fingers went numb, thawed, went numb again. She stopped feeling her toes altogether. But the work had to be done, so they did it. A week after the storm, Rhett announced he was going to town for supplies. We're low on everything, he said. Going to be gone most of the day. Eli, you help Lena with whatever needs doing. I could go, Lena offered. Been cooped up for weeks. Rhett shook his head. Roads are bad. I know how to handle them. You don't. So teach me. Some other time. Today you stay here. He left before she could argue. Lena watched him ride off, irritation burning in her gut. She was tired of being told what she could and couldn't do, tired of being treated like she'd break at the first sign of trouble. He's protecting you, Eli said, reading her mind, in his weird, backwards way. I don't need protecting. Try telling him that. Far as he's concerned, everyone needs protecting, especially people he... Eli stopped. People he what? Nothing. Never mind. But his ears were red. Lena let it drop. They spent the day doing the endless ranch work, feeding animals, hauling water, checking on the cattle. Around noon, a rider approached from the south. Lena shaded her eyes, trying to make out who it was. The man who dismounted was big, bearded, with the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. Afternoon, he called out. This the Calder place? It is, Lena said, staying on the porch. Can I help you? Looking for Rhett. Got business to discuss. He's in town. Won't be back till evening. The man's eyes crawled over her in a way that made her skin crawl. That's so. Well, maybe I'll just wait then. You his new girl? Heard he'd brought someone in. I work here. That's all. Sure you do. He took a step closer. Pretty thing like you all the way out here with 2 men. Must get lonely. Eli appeared in the doorway, rifle in hand. She said he's not here. You can wait in town if you want to talk to him. The man looked at Eli, then back at Lena. His smile widened. Easy, boy. Just making conversation. No harm in that. He touched his hat brim in a mocking salute. Tell Rhett that Carson stopped by. He'll know what it's about. He rode off. Lena let out a breath she hadn't known she was holding. Who was that? She asked. Trouble. Eli lowered the rifle. Carson runs cattle on the land west of here. He and Pa have been fighting over water rights for years. It gets ugly sometimes. How ugly? Ugly enough Pa sleeps with a gun under his pillow. Lena filed that information away. When Rhett got back that evening, she told him about the visitor. His face went hard. What did he say exactly? Just that he had business to discuss. Wanted to wait, but Eli sent him off. Rhett looked at his son. Good. Don't let that man on this property unless I'm here. Don't trust him, don't talk to him, don't turn your back on him. Is he dangerous? Lena asked. Depends on how desperate he gets. He wants my water access. Has for years. Tried buying me out, tried scaring me out, tried just about everything short of burning me out. Which he might try next, who knows? Why not just sell him the access? Because once you give men like Carson an inch, they take everything. He gets my water, next he wants my land, then my cattle, then everything I built. No, I hold what's mine. That night, Rhett taught Lena how to shoot. They went out behind the barn, set up targets, and he handed her a rifle. You need to know how to protect yourself. especially if men like Carson come around. The gun was heavier than she expected. Rhett showed her how to hold it, how to sight down the barrel, how to breathe and squeeze the trigger instead of jerking it. She missed the first 6 shots. The 7th clipped the target. Better, Rhett said. Again. They practiced until dark. By the end, Lena could hit the target more often than not. Her shoulder ached from the recoil, and her ears rang from the noise, but she felt something like power settling in her chest. "You're a natural," Rhett said, taking the rifle. "Most people flinch. You don't." "Learned not to flinch a long time ago." He studied her in the dying light. "Your father really did a number on you, didn't he?" "He did what he thought he had to. Raising kids is hard when you hate your life and everyone in it." "That ain't an excuse." "No, but it's an explanation." She looked at him. "You ever hit Eli?" "What?" "No. Christ, no." He looked genuinely horrified. "I may be a hard man, Lena, but I ain't cruel. There's a difference." "I know. I'm starting to see that." They walked back to the house in comfortable silence. At the door, Rhett stopped. "If Carson comes back, you shoot first and ask questions later. Understand?" "That seems extreme." "It's necessary. Trust me on this." She nodded. Inside, Eli had dinner waiting, his first time cooking since getting sick. It was barely edible, but they ate it anyway, praising him until he blushed. That night, lying in bed, Lena thought about Rhett's hands on hers, teaching her to shoot. Thought about the way he'd looked at her in the firelight. Thought about all the small kindnesses he tried to hide under roughness and silence. She was in dangerous territory, starting to care about this place. About Eli. About Rhett. Caring made you vulnerable. Made you weak. She'd promised herself she'd never be weak again. But lying there in the dark, she wondered if maybe strength and vulnerability weren't opposites. Maybe they were 2 sides of the same thing. Maybe you couldn't truly be strong unless you had something worth protecting. She fell asleep still thinking about it. December came with more snow and bitter cold. They lost another cow to wolves. Found tracks all around the property, big ones, whole packs worth. Rhett and Eli started taking shifts at night, watching the herd. "I can take a shift," Lena offered. "No. I can shoot. You taught me yourself." "Shooting targets ain't the same as shooting something that's trying to kill you." "Then teach me that too." Rhett looked at her for a long moment, finally nodded. "All right, but you take the early shift when it's least dangerous, and you don't go out alone. Eli goes with you." They started the night watches. Lena learned what real cold felt like, sitting still for hours while the temperature dropped below anything human was meant to endure. Learned to read the darkness, to identify shapes and sounds. Learned that wolves were smart, patient, and absolutely terrifying when you saw their eyes reflecting your lamplight. One night, the wolves tested them. Lena and Eli were on watch when the cattle started getting nervous, shuffling, lowing, pressing together. Then Lena saw them, shapes circling the herd, low to the ground, moving with eerie coordination. "Eli," she said quietly, "get your father. I'm not leaving you alone. I got the rifle. Go, now." He ran. Lena stood, heart hammering, watching the wolves close in. She fired a warning shot. The wolves scattered but didn't leave, just pulled back, regrouped, started circling again. Rhett appeared at a dead run, rifle in hand. "How many?" "5, maybe 6. "Damn!" He moved to stand beside her. "We can't let them get comfortable hunting here. They'll come back every night." The biggest wolf, probably the alpha, broke from the pack and rushed the herd. Rhett fired. The wolf yelped and tumbled, got up limping, and retreated. The rest of the pack melted into the darkness. They waited an hour. The wolves didn't come back. "Good shooting," Rhett said. "You too." They stood there, adrenaline slowly fading, breath fogging in the freezing air. Rhett looked at her. "You didn't panic." "Didn't have time to panic. Had to shoot." "Most people would have run or frozen up." "I'm not most people." "No," he agreed quietly. "You sure as hell aren't." Something passed between them. Something warm despite the cold, solid despite everything uncertain. Lena felt it settle in her chest like an ember taking hold. "We should get back," she said, "before we freeze." They walked to the house together. Eli had hot coffee waiting. They sat around the table, hands wrapped around cups, slowly thawing. "You two make a good team," Eli observed. Rhett grunted. Lena said nothing, but under the table, Rhett's boot touched hers. Just for a second, just enough to say, "I see you, I'm here." And for the first time in her life, Lena understood what it meant to belong somewhere. Not because she was trapped or because she had nowhere else to go, but because this place, these people, had become worth fighting for. Christmas came and went with little fanfare. They were too busy surviving to celebrate much. But Lena found herself happier than she'd been in years. The work was still brutal. The cold was still killing. Rhett was still difficult and closed off. But there were moments. Small ones. Rhett teaching her to read the ledger books. Eli making her laugh with terrible jokes. The three of them sitting by the fire after a hard day, too tired to talk, but comfortable in the silence. She was building something here. Not just a life, but a family. Broken and strange, and nothing like what she'd imagined, but real. And that was worth all the rest. January brought a thaw that turned everything to mud and misery. The snow melted too fast, flooding the low pastures and turning the ranch into a swamp. They spent days digging drainage ditches, moving cattle to higher ground, fighting a losing battle against water that had nowhere to go. Lena's boots were perpetually soaked. Her hands cracked and bled from the constant wet and cold. Rhett's birthday fell on a gray Tuesday that felt like any other day. He didn't mention it. Eli only told her by accident when he was marking the calendar for breeding records. "Pa's 42 today," he said absently, then caught himself. "Don't tell him I told you. He hates making a fuss about it." Lena looked at the date, thinking. 42 years old, and the man had never learned to accept kindness, had probably spent every birthday since his wife died working himself into the ground to avoid thinking about what he'd lost. That seemed wrong somehow. Seemed like something that needed fixing. She waited until Rhett and Eli went out to check the north fence line, then got to work. The pantry was still sparse, but she'd been squirreling away supplies from each trip to town. Flour, sugar, a precious tin of cinnamon. She'd been saving them for something special without knowing what. Now she knew. She made a cake. Simple, nothing fancy, but real. Made fried chicken from two of their oldest hens who'd stopped laying. Used the last of the preserved vegetables to make something almost like a proper meal. Set the table with the good plates she'd found wrapped in cloth in the back of a cupboard, probably unused since Rhett's wife died. The house filled with smells that had nothing to do with survival and everything to do with celebration. Lena worked steadily, ignoring the voice in her head that said this was stupid, that Rhett would hate it, that she was overstepping. She set the table just as the sun was setting, lit candles she'd made from tallow, stood back and looked at what she'd created. It looked like a home, like people lived here who cared about more than just not dying, like maybe joy was possible even in hard places. She heard them coming, boots on the porch, Eli's voice saying something she couldn't make out. The door opened. They stopped dead in the doorway. Rhett stared at the table, at the food, at the candles. His face went through a series of expressions too fast to read before settling into something carefully blank. "What's all this?" he asked. "Dinner." Lena wiped her hands on her apron, suddenly nervous. "It's your birthday." Seemed like that ought to mean something. "I told you I know what you told me. I did it anyway. You can be mad about it if you want, but the food's getting cold either way." Eli was grinning like a fool. "This looks amazing. How did you—" "Sit down and eat before I change my mind and feed it to the chickens." They sat. Rhett moved like a man in a dream, mechanical and uncertain. Lena served the food, hyper-aware of his eyes following her movements. When everyone had full plates, she sat too. "Well," she said, "you going to eat or just stare at it?" Rhett picked up his fork, took a bite, stopped. Something happened to his face, a crack in that careful mask he wore. He took another bite, then another. His voice came out rough. He cleared his throat, tried again. "This is really good, Lena." "It's just chicken." "It ain't just chicken." He looked at her, and there was something raw in his eyes. "Nobody's done something like this for me in 5 years. Not since—" He stopped, couldn't finish, didn't need to. "You're welcome," Lena said quietly. They ate. Eli filled the silence with chatter about the fence repairs, the cattle count, anything to smooth over the thick emotion in the room. When they finished the main course, Lena brought out the cake. It wasn't much, lopsided, a bit burned on one side, but Eli's eyes went wide. You made a cake? An actual cake? Don't get too excited. It might be terrible. It wasn't terrible. It was good, sweet, and rich, and everything they'd been denying themselves for months. They ate it slowly, savoring every bite. Rhett didn't say anything, but he finished his piece and accepted seconds when Lena offered. After dinner, Eli excused himself early, claiming exhaustion. Lena knew what he was doing, giving them space, giving his father a chance to say whatever he needed to say without an audience. She appreciated it even as it made her nervous. She cleared the table. Rhett helped without being asked, carrying dishes to the basin. They washed up together in silence, falling into the rhythm they'd developed over months of shared work. You didn't have to do all this, Rhett said finally. I know. So why did you? Lena scrubbed a plate clean, considering her answer. Because you deserve to have one day that doesn't feel like punishment. Because Eli deserves to see his father smile. Because... She stopped, started over. Because I wanted to, that's all. That's all, he repeated, like he didn't quite believe her. What, you think I got some ulterior motive? Think I'm trying to manipulate you or something? No, I just... He set down the dish he was drying. I don't understand you, Lena. You got every reason to hate me, to hate this place. But you did this anyway. Why? Maybe I don't hate you as much as I should. The words hung between them. Rhett turned to look at her, really look at her, and the air got thick. You should, he said quietly. Hate me, I mean. What I did, buying you from your father, that was wrong. I knew it was wrong when I did it, but I was desperate, and I told myself it was just business, just an arrangement, that I was helping you get away from a bad situation. But that don't make it right. No, Lena agreed. It doesn't. So why don't you hate me? She dried her hands on a towel, taking her time. I did. At first. Hated you, hated my father, hated the whole damn world. But hate's exhausting. And somewhere along the way I realized you weren't the enemy. You were just... She struggled for the word. Broken. Same as me. Trying to survive the only way you knew how. That don't excuse it. No, but it explains it. She met his eyes. You ain't a bad man, Rhett. You're just a hurt one. And hurt people do stupid things sometimes. He looked at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, carefully, he reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered on her cheek. You're too forgiving, he said, and you're too hard on yourself. Maybe we're both right. His hand was still on her face. Lena's heart was doing things that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with want. She should step back, should put distance between them, should remember that this was her employer, that she had no power here, that mixing work with feelings was a recipe for disaster. She didn't step back. Rhett, she whispered, don't. His thumb traced her cheekbone. Don't say it, because if you say it, I'll have to do something about it, and I ain't sure either of us is ready for that. What if I want you to do something about it? Then you're crazier than I thought. But he didn't pull away, didn't move, just stood there, frozen in the moment, fighting with himself. Lena made the choice for both of them. She leaned in and kissed him. It wasn't gentle, wasn't soft or sweet or any of the things first kisses were supposed to be. It was desperate and hungry and tasted like 5 months of tension finally breaking. Rhett made a sound low in his throat and pulled her closer, one hand tangling in her hair, the other splayed across her back. They kissed like drowning people coming up for air, like they'd been starving and suddenly found food. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Rhett rested his forehead against hers. This is a mistake, he said. Probably. Gonna complicate everything. Definitely. We should stop. Yeah. Neither of them moved. Rhett pulled back just far enough to look at her. I can't offer you much, Lena. I got a failing ranch, a son who needs raising, and more baggage than any sane person would want to deal with. I'm difficult and cold, and I'll probably hurt you without meaning to because that's what I do. You deserve better than that. What if I don't want better? What if I want this? Then you're a fool. Been called worse. He almost smiled. What are we doing here? I don't know, but I'm tired of pretending I don't feel it. Tired of dancing around it. You feel it too. I know you do. Feeling something and acting on it are different things. So we won't act on it. We'll just acknowledge it, that it's there, that it's real. She put her hand on his chest, felt his heart hammering under her palm. And then we'll figure out what to do about it. Rhett covered her hand with his. I can't promise this goes anywhere good. I stopped expecting good a long time ago. I'll settle for honest. I can do honest. He kissed her again, softer this time. Honest is I haven't felt this way since my wife died. Honest is you scare the hell out of me because I don't know what to do with these feelings. Honest is I look at you and see everything I thought I'd lost. Hope, purpose, something worth protecting. And that terrifies me. Lena's throat went tight. Honest is I came here expecting to hate you forever. Honest is somewhere along the way you stopped being my captor and started being something else. Honest is I don't know what we're doing or where this goes, but I want to find out. They stood there in the kitchen, holding each other while the candles burned low. Outside, wind rattled the windows. Inside, something fragile and new was taking root. We take this slow, Rhett said finally. No rushing. No promises we can't keep. We just see what happens. Okay? And Eli can't know. Not yet. Not till we figure out what this is. Okay? And if you change your mind, if this gets to be too much, you tell me. No guilt, no hard feelings. You just tell me and we go back to how things were. That going to be possible? Going back? Probably not. But we pretend it is, anyway. Lena nodded. Rhett kissed her forehead and stepped back, putting necessary distance between them. The cold rushed in where his warmth had been. You should get some sleep, he said. Tomorrow's going to be another long day. They're all long days. True enough. She turned to go, stopped at the doorway. Rhett, thank you for being honest. Thank you for the birthday dinner, for all of it. It meant more than you know. Lena climbed the stairs to her room, mind whirling. She'd crossed a line tonight, multiple lines, and she had no idea if that was the bravest thing she'd ever done or the stupidest. Probably both. The next few weeks were careful. They worked together like always, but now every accidental touch felt loaded. Every look held weight. They were dancing around something too big to name, and both of them knew it. Eli noticed, of course. Kid was too observant for his own good. Something's different, he said one afternoon while he and Lena were hanging laundry. What do you mean? With you and Pa, you're, I don't know, less tense. He smiles more. You don't look like you want to murder him most days. I never wanted to murder him. You absolutely did, at least 3 times a week. Eli grinned. I'm not complaining. Whatever changed, I like it. He's more like he used to be, before Ma died. Lena pinned a sheet to the line, not looking at him. People change. Time passes. Things get easier. Is that what this is? Things getting easier? What else would it be? Eli studied her. I don't know, but I'm glad for it, whatever it is. He wandered off to do other chores, leaving Lena alone with her thoughts. She wondered if she and Rhett were fooling anyone. Wondered if trying to hide it was even worth the effort. That night, after Eli went to bed, Rhett found her on the porch. She'd taken to sitting out there when the weather allowed, watching the stars and trying to make sense of her life. Mind company? He asked. Depends on the company. He sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the night sounds. Eventually, Rhett spoke. I've been thinking about what you said, about being honest. And I think we need to tell Eli. Not everything, but something. He's not stupid. He's going to figure it out eventually anyway. You sure? You were pretty adamant about keeping it quiet. I was scared. Still am, if I'm being honest. But hiding it feels wrong, like we're doing something shameful. And this ain't shameful. He looked at her. Is it? No, it's not. So we tell him. Simple as that. You think he'll be okay with it? Eli, he'll probably throw a party. Kid's been trying to get me to move on for years. Kept saying Ma wouldn't want me to be alone forever. She wouldn't, Lena said. If she loved you, and I know she did, she'd want you to be happy. I'm starting to think I could be. Happy, I mean. With you. If you'll have me. Lena's chest went tight. That sounds an awful lot like a promise you said we weren't making. Maybe I changed my mind. Maybe I'm tired of being careful. He took her hand. I love you, Lena. Don't know when it happened or how, but it did. And I'm done pretending otherwise. The words hit her like a physical blow. She'd known. Somewhere deep down she'd known. But hearing him say it out loud made it real in a way thinking it never could. You don't have to say it back, Rhett continued, misreading her silence. I just needed you to know. Needed it out there between us instead of rotting in my chest. I love you too, Lena said. You're difficult and stubborn, and you drive me crazy half the time. But I love you anyway. Maybe because of it. I don't know, but it's true. Rhett pulled her close, tucked her against his side. She fit there like she'd been made for that exact spot. They sat like that for a long time, holding each other under the stars. What happens now? Lena asked. Now? Now we tell Eli, and then we figure out the rest as we go. They told Eli the next morning over breakfast. He looked between them, processing. Then his face split into the biggest grin Lena had ever seen. Finally, I thought you two were going to dance around each other forever. Rhett blinked. You knew? Of course I knew. I got eyes, don't I? You've been looking at her like she hung the moon since Christmas, and she looks at you the same way when you ain't watching. I was starting to think I'd have to lock you in the barn together to get you to admit it. You're not upset? Lena asked. Upset? Why would I be upset? You make him happy. Haven't seen him this happy since Ma was alive. Why would I be upset about that? Rhett cleared his throat, clearly moved. You're okay with this? Really? Pa, I'm more than okay. I'm thrilled. Lena's been good for you, good for both of us. She's family already, has been for months. This just makes it official. We ain't talking marriage, Rhett said quickly. Just seeing where things go. Eli rolled his eyes. Sure, Pa. Whatever you say. After Eli left for his chores, Rhett looked at Lena across the table. That went better than expected. He's a good kid. You raised him right. We raised him right. Don't sell yourself short. He reached across and took her hand. You really okay with this? With us? More than okay. For the first time in my life, I'm exactly where I want to be. The weeks that followed felt like waking up from a long sleep. Rhett smiled more, laughed easier. He'd find excuses to touch her, a hand on her back, fingers brushing hers when passing dishes, stolen kisses when Eli wasn't looking. Lena had never been courted before, had never known what it felt like to be wanted for something other than her labor. It was intoxicating. They still fought, both of them too stubborn and set in their ways to agree on everything. But the fights were different now. They could argue about the best way to fix a fence or whether to buy more chickens without it feeling like war. They could disagree and still love each other. In March, Carson came back. Lena was alone in the house when she heard horses approaching. She looked out the window and felt her stomach drop. Carson, plus 3 other men, all armed. She grabbed the rifle, checked it was loaded, and stepped onto the porch. Carson dismounted, that same oily smile on his face. Well now, all alone today? Where's Rhett? Out working. What do you want, Carson? Just came to make another offer on that water access. Real generous this time. He'd be a fool not to take it. He already told you no. He tell you to speak for him now? That how it works around here? One of the other men laughed. Lena kept the rifle steady, pointing at the ground but ready. State your business or leave. Those are your choices. Carson's smile faded. You got a mouth on you, girl. Rhett know you talk to people like this? Rhett knows exactly who I am. Now I'm going to count to 3. And if you ain't turned those horses around by then, I'm going to assume you mean harm. 1. You ain't going to shoot nobody. 2. Carson's hand moved toward his gun. Lena raised the rifle in one smooth motion, aiming directly at his chest. 3. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Carson raised his hand slowly. Easy now. No need for that. Then get on your horse and get off this property. Rhett's going to hear about this. About how his girl threatened— His girl? Lena cut him off. I ain't nobody's property, Carson. Not Rhett's, not yours, not anybody's. And if you come back here again without an invitation, you won't get a warning next time. I'll just shoot you and let Rhett bury the body. Carson stared at her. Then he started laughing. You got spirit, I'll give you that. Shame you're wasting it on Calder. Man's a sinking ship. He mounted up. The other men followed. They rode off slow, making it clear they weren't scared, just choosing to leave. Lena held the rifle until they were out of sight, then sat down hard on the porch steps. Her hands were shaking, her heart hammered. But she'd done it, stood her ground, protected what was hers. When Rhett came back an hour later and she told him what happened, his face went pale, then red. He threatened you? He tried. I threatened him back. He left, with a rifle pointed at him. Well, yeah, wasn't going to ask him nicely. Rhett pulled her into his arms, holding tight. You could have been killed. But I wasn't. And he knows now that this place is protected, that coming here has consequences. Still, I don't like you being in danger. Then don't leave me alone when you know he might come around. I won't, not anymore. He pulled back to look at her. You're something else, you know that? So I've been told. That night, Rhett sat at the kitchen table with a bottle and a troubled expression. Lena joined him, accepting the drink he poured. Carson's getting desperate, Rhett said. That's dangerous. Desperate men do stupid things. So what do? We prepare. Make sure we're never caught off guard. And if he comes back, Rhett's jaw tightened. If he comes back, we end it, one way or another. You mean? I protect what's mine. You, Eli, this ranch. Whatever it takes. Lena understood. This was the Old West, where justice was whatever you could enforce and the law was days away even if you could reach it. If Carson pushed hard enough, Rhett would push back. And blood would be the result. Let's hope it doesn't come to that, she said. Yeah, let's hope. But they both knew hope wasn't enough, so they prepared, checked guns, stockpiled ammunition, made plans for different scenarios. They were ready. They just didn't know what they were ready for. April brought rain and new trouble in equal measure. Carson didn't come back himself, but his cattle started appearing on Calder land. Just a few at first, strays, easy to explain away. Then more. Then whole sections of fence came down overnight, and suddenly Carson's herd was grazing on Rhett's grass, drinking from Rhett's water. He's testing us, Rhett said, staring at the broken fence, seeing how far he can push before we push back. They spent a week repairing fence and driving Carson's cattle back across the property line. Every morning, more fence was down. Every morning, more cattle had crossed over. This is deliberate, Eli said. He's wearing us down. I know. Rhett's jaw was tight. And it's working. We can't keep this up forever. Lena watched him pace the kitchen that night, wearing a path in the floor. He was stressed in a way she hadn't seen before. Not just angry, but worried. Genuinely scared about losing everything he'd built. What if we went to town? She suggested. Got the sheriff involved? Sheriff's in Carson's pocket, has been for years. We go to him, we might as well paint a target on our backs. So what do? Rhett stopped pacing, looked at her with something hard in his eyes. We end it. Tomorrow. One way or another, this ends. The next morning, Rhett rode out before dawn. He didn't say where he was going, but Lena knew. She watched him disappear into the gray light, fear coiling in her stomach like a snake. He's going to confront Carson, Eli said, coming to stand beside her. Alone. That's suicide. That's Pa. Never could ask for help when he needed it most. Lena made a decision. Saddle the horses. We're going after him. He told us to stay here. And I'm telling you to saddle the damn horses. I didn't come this far to watch him get himself killed over pride. They rode hard, following Rhett's trail. Found him 2 hours later at the property line where Calder land met Carson's. He wasn't alone. Carson was there with 4 men, all armed. Rhett sat on his horse, rifle across his lap, facing them down. Tired of playing games, Carson was saying as they rode up. You sell me that water access or I take it, your choice. There's a third option, Rhett said. You back off and leave my land alone. Carson laughed. Or what? You gonna shoot all 5 of us? You ain't that good, Calder. Maybe not, but I don't have to be. Lena and Eli rode up on either side of Rhett. Carson's smile faded when he saw the rifles they carried. Well now, he said. Brought the whole family, did you? You wanted to talk terms? Rhett's voice was flat, dangerous. Here's my terms. You fix every fence your men tore down. You pay for every blade of grass your cattle ate. And you never set foot on my land again. Do that, we got no problem. Don't do that. He let the sentence hang. And if I refuse? Then we got a problem that ends with somebody dead. Could be you, could be me. Either way, this stops today. The air went thick with tension. Carson's men shifted nervously. One of them had his hand on his gun. Lena kept her rifle ready, heart hammering, praying this didn't turn into a bloodbath. Then a new voice cut through the silence. "That's enough." Everyone turned. A man rode toward them, older, well-dressed, with the kind of authority that didn't need proving. He stopped his horse between the two groups, looking at Carson with disgust. "Judge Morrison," Carson said, and there was fear in his voice now. "This ain't your concern. It is when you're breaking the law on my watch. Destruction of property, theft, harassment. I could go on. Should I? I know exactly what you were doing. Same thing you've been doing to every small rancher in the county. Pushing, threatening, stealing. Well, it stops now. You're going to pay Mr. Calder for his damages. You're going to fix his fences, and you're going to leave him alone. You understand me?" Carson's face went red. "You can't make me." "I can, and I am. Because if I have to come out here again, I'm bringing the federal marshal. And we both know you don't want that, given some of your other business dealings." Whatever that meant, it worked. Carson's face went pale. He nodded stiffly. "Good. Now get off this land before I change my mind about letting you off easy." Carson and his men rode away without another word. Judge Morrison watched them go, then turned to Rhett. "You should have come to me sooner. Didn't think it would do any good. Figured you'd side with money over right." "Then you don't know me very well. I'm friends with your father, Rhett. Watched you grow up. You think I'd let Carson run you off your own land?" He shook his head. "I heard rumors about what was happening out here. Came to see for myself. Glad I did." "How'd you know to come today?" The judge looked at Lena. "Got a letter. Anonymous. Said there might be trouble out here this morning, and could I please look into it?" Lena kept her face carefully neutral. She'd written that letter 3 days ago and paid a kid in town to deliver it. Hadn't told Rhett because he would have stopped her, would have said they could handle it themselves. But sometimes you couldn't handle things yourself. Sometimes you needed help. And there was no shame in asking for it. Rhett looked at her. She met his gaze steadily. He nodded slightly. Understanding, gratitude, maybe a little exasperation. "Thank you, Judge," he said, "for coming out. Just doing my job. You have any more trouble with Carson, you let me know. I meant what I said about the marshal." He tipped his hat to Lena. "Ma'am, good day to you both." He rode off, leaving them alone at the property line. Rhett dismounted, walked over to Lena's horse, looked up at her. "You wrote to the judge." "I did. Without telling me." "You would have said no." "Damn right I would have. Could have handled it myself." "Could you? Or would you be dead right now?" She dismounted to stand in front of him. "You got pride, Rhett. I respect that. But pride don't stop bullets, and I'll be damned if I sit by and watch you get yourself killed over it." He stared at her. Then slowly, he started laughing. "You're something else, you know that? So you keep telling me." He pulled her close, kissed her hard. "Thank you for saving my stubborn hide. Someone has to." Eli cleared his throat. "Can we go home now? I'm starving, and watching you two is making me uncomfortable." They rode back to the ranch together. The crisis had passed. Carson would fix the fences, pay the damages, and leave them alone. Judge Morrison would make sure of it. But more than that, something had shifted. Rhett had learned he didn't have to face everything alone, that accepting help wasn't weakness, that the people who loved you wanted to stand beside you, not behind you. It was a hard lesson for a hard man, but he was learning. Spring turned to summer, and the ranch came alive. The cattle fattened on good grass. The chickens laid eggs like it was their job. The garden Lena planted behind the house actually grew, giving them fresh vegetables for the first time in years. Everything was good, better than good. And that terrified Lena more than any of the hardship had. She'd learned young that good things didn't last, that happiness was temporary, that the universe had a way of balancing the scales, and if you got too comfortable, something would come along to knock you back down. She waited for the other shoe to drop. It came in July, but not in the way she expected. She was in the garden pulling weeds when the nausea hit. She barely made it to the side of the house before she was sick. When it passed, she sat in the dirt, shaking, trying to figure out what she'd eaten that didn't agree with her. Then she counted back, realized her monthly bleeding was late. Very late. "Oh no," she whispered. She was pregnant. The realization hit her like a physical blow. Pregnant, with Rhett's child. They weren't married, hadn't even talked about marriage. What would people say? What would Rhett say? She managed to get through the day without anyone noticing, made dinner, cleaned up, went through all the motions while her mind spun in circles. That night, lying in bed, she tried to figure out how to tell him, tried to figure out if she even wanted to tell him. The decision was made for her a week later when the morning sickness got so bad she couldn't hide it anymore. Rhett found her behind the barn, sick and miserable, and his face went white. "How long?" he asked. "Week or so, maybe longer, I don't know. We're... He couldn't seem to finish a sentence. "I'm pregnant, yes." She wiped her mouth, stood on shaky legs. "I'm sorry, we should have been more careful. Don't apologize." He pulled her close, one hand on her stomach like he could feel the life growing there. It's a lot, but it's not bad. It's not bad, Lena." "You sure? Because you look like you might pass out." "I'm sure." He kissed her forehead. "Scared, yeah, but sure. We'll figure it out. People are going to talk. We're not married. Then we'll get married." Lena pulled back to look at him. "That's your proposal? Then we'll get married? Real romantic, Rhett." He had the grace to look embarrassed. "I was going to do it proper, had a whole plan, but I guess now's as good a time as any." He took her hands. "Lena Crow, you're the most stubborn, infuriating, incredible woman I've ever met. You took a dying ranch and made it live again. Took a broken man and made him whole. You stand up to me when I'm wrong, stand beside me when I'm right, and you don't take any of my nonsense. I love you more than I thought I could love anything. Will you marry me?" Lena felt tears on her cheeks. Happy tears, scared tears, every kind of tear all at once. "Yes, yes, you impossible man, I'll marry you." He kissed her, gentle this time, mindful of the child growing between them. When they pulled apart, they were both grinning like fools. "We should tell Eli," Lena said. "He's going to lose his mind." They were right. Eli did lose his mind, in the best way. He whooped loud enough to scare the chickens and hugged Lena so hard she couldn't breathe. "I'm going to be a brother. And you're going to be my ma." "Well, not my ma, but sort of my ma. This is the best day ever." They were married a week later by Judge Morrison in a simple ceremony at the ranch. Eli stood witness. Lena wore a new dress Rhett had bought in town, simple and blue and perfect. Rhett wore his best shirt and looked more nervous than she'd ever seen him. When the judge pronounced them married and told Rhett he could kiss his bride, the kiss was soft and sweet and full of promise. This was a beginning. A real one. The months that followed were hard in new ways. Lena's pregnancy was rough, constant sickness, exhaustion, her body changing in ways that scared her. But Rhett was patient. He took over the heavy work, made her rest, brought her whatever strange food she craved at odd hours. "You're being too nice," she said one night when he brought her tea and crackers at midnight. "I'm going to get spoiled." "Good. You deserve spoiling." "I'm enormous. And mean. And I threw a plate at you yesterday." "I probably deserved it. Can't remember why, but I probably did." She laughed despite herself. "What if I'm a terrible mother? What if I don't know how? Then you'll learn. Same way you learned everything else. By being too stubborn to fail." He put his hand on her swollen belly. "This baby's lucky. Got a mother who fights for what she loves. Can't ask for better than that." In October, her water broke in the middle of the night. Rhett sent Eli for the midwife and stayed with Lena, holding her hand through the contractions, looking more terrified than she'd ever seen him. "You can do this," he kept saying. "You're the strongest person I know. You can do this." The labor was long and brutal. Lena had never felt pain like this, pain that consumed everything, that made her think she might actually die. But she didn't die. She pushed and screamed and swore at Rhett and the midwife and anyone else in range. And then, just when she thought she couldn't take any more, there was a new sound. A baby crying. "It's a boy," the midwife said, placing the tiny, bloody, perfect creature on Lena's chest. Lena looked down at her son and felt something crack open in her chest. Love. Pure and overwhelming and absolutely terrifying. She'd made this. Her body had grown this whole person. Rhett was crying, actually crying, tears running down his face as he looked at his son. "He's perfect," he whispered. "Lena, he's perfect." "We made a person," she said, laughing and crying at the same time. We actually made a person. They named him James after Rhett's father, Jamie for short. He was small and loud and demanded constant attention, but Lena had never been happier. Even through the exhaustion, the sleepless nights, the overwhelming responsibility of keeping another human alive, she'd never been happier. Rhett was a different man as a father, gentle in ways Lena hadn't known he could be. He'd hold Jamie for hours, just watching him sleep, like he couldn't quite believe this tiny person existed. Eli was equally smitten, constantly wanting to hold his baby brother, teaching him things he was far too young to understand. The ranch thrived. With Carson gone and the fences secure, the cattle multiplied. They had their best year in a decade. Rhett hired 2 ranch hands to help with the work, taking some of the burden off their shoulders. They weren't rich, but they were comfortable, stable. One evening in early spring, nearly a year after their wedding, Rhett led Lena outside. Behind the house, a young tree had been planted, barely more than a sapling. "What's this?" she asked. "Apple tree. Figured we should plant something that'll outlive us. Something Jamie can show his kids someday." Lena looked at the fragile tree, at the careful stake supporting it, at the dark earth freshly turned around its roots. "It's perfect." Rhett pulled a small box from his pocket. "I know I already gave you a ring, but that was rushed, desperate. This one..." He opened the box. Inside was a simple gold band with a small stone. "This one's the real thing, the one I would have given you if we'd done this right from the start. We did it right enough. Still, you deserve proper." He slid the ring onto her finger beside the plain band she already wore. "There. Now it's official." She kissed him under the apple tree, their baby asleep in the house, the ranch quiet around them. "Thank you for all of this, for giving me a home." "You gave me one first," Rhett said. "I was just a shell before you came, going through motions. You made me remember what it was to be alive." That summer, a letter came. Lena recognized the handwriting on the envelope, her mother's, shaky and uncertain. She opened it with trembling hands. The letter was short. Her father had died, fell off a horse drunk and broke his neck. Her mother was selling the homestead, moving to live with Lena's aunt in Missouri. And she wanted to see Lena first, wanted to meet her grandchild. Lena showed the letter to Rhett. "I don't know if I want to see her. She never stood up for me, never protected me." "That's true. But she also did the best she could with what she had, same as all of us." He took her hand. "You don't owe her anything, but if you want to see her, want her to meet Jamie, I'll support that. Your choice." Lena thought about it for days, finally decided that her mother deserved to know her grandson, deserved to see that Lena had survived, had thrived, had built something good from the ashes of what she'd been given. Her mother arrived in August, small and worn and so much older than Lena remembered. She cried when she saw Jamie holding him like he was made of glass. "He's beautiful," she whispered. "You're beautiful. This place, Lena, you did so good." They talked for hours. Her mother apologized for not protecting her, for being too weak to stand up to her father, for all the ways she'd failed. Lena found she couldn't hold on to the anger anymore. Her mother had been broken by life, same as anyone, had done what she could to survive. "I forgive you," Lena said. "I forgive you, Ma." Her mother stayed a week. When she left, she hugged Lena tight and whispered, "I'm proud of you, baby. So proud." After she was gone, Lena stood on the porch watching the dust settle on the road. Rhett came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. "You okay?" "Yeah, I think I am. It's strange. I spent so long being angry at her, and now I just feel sad. Sad for what she could have had if she'd been stronger. Sad for all the years we lost. But grateful for what you found instead?" "Yeah, grateful for that." Years passed. Jamie grew from a baby into a toddler into a boy who looked like his father, but had his mother's stubborn streak. Eli moved to town, started courting a girl from the general store, talked about starting his own ranch someday. The apple tree grew taller, stronger, finally bearing fruit. Lena stood under that tree one autumn evening, picking apples while Jamie played nearby. She thought about the girl she'd been, 19, angry, sold like livestock to a stranger. Thought about how that girl would never have believed this life was possible, would never have imagined finding love in a place meant to be a prison. But that's what life did sometimes. It took your worst moments and grew something beautiful from them. Not because the pain didn't matter, but because you refused to let it be the end of your story. Rhett came up behind her, kissed her neck. What are you thinking about? How far we've come. How different everything is from what I expected. Better or worse? Better. So much better. She turned to face him. You know what I realized? That day my father sold me, I thought it was the worst day of my life. Turns out it was the best. Because it brought me here. To you. To all of this. Funny how that works. Yeah, she kissed him. Funny how life works out when you're too stubborn to give up on it. Jamie ran over, demanding apple slices. They sat under the tree together, the three of them, eating fruit from branches they'd planted together. Above them, the sky was turning gold and orange and purple. Around them, the ranch spread out, alive, thriving, home. Lena had spent the first 19 years of her life learning how to survive. She'd spent the years since learning how to live, and she'd discovered they weren't the same thing at all. Survival was endurance. It was making it through one more day, one more hour, one more minute. It was gritting your teeth and taking whatever life threw at you because you had no other choice. But living was choosing. It was finding joy in small moments. It was building something worth protecting. It was loving people even when it scared you, fighting for what mattered even when it seemed impossible, and refusing to let your past define your future. She'd been sold like cattle, been treated as property, been told her whole life that she was worth whatever price a man decided to put on her, and she'd proven them all wrong, not by escaping or running away or burning everything down, though she'd dreamed of all three, but by staying, by working, by taking the life she'd been handed and reshaping it into something she could be proud of. The ranch that had been her prison had become her kingdom. The man who'd bought her had become her partner. The daughter sold like livestock had become a woman who knew her own worth. And it wasn't measured in dollars or labor or what anyone else thought she deserved. It was measured in apple trees planted for a future she'd helped build, in a son who would grow up knowing he was loved and wanted and valued, in a husband who'd learned that strength wasn't the same as hardness, and that opening yourself to love was the bravest thing anyone could do. As the sun set over Calder Ranch, Lena Calder, no longer Crow, no longer that frightened girl with blood on her chin and nowhere to run, looked at the life she'd built and understood something fundamental. You don't need to be born into a good life to have one. You don't need perfect circumstances or ideal beginnings or easy roads. You just need the courage to keep going when everything tells you to quit. The strength to believe you deserve better even when the world says otherwise. And the stubbornness to build something beautiful from whatever broken pieces you're given. She'd started with nothing but anger and determination. She'd built an empire from that. Not the kind measured in acres or cattle or money in the bank, though they had all that now too, but the kind that mattered more. The kind made of love, family, belonging, home. The kind that lasted. And that, she thought as Rhett's hand found hers and Jamie's laughter filled the air, was worth everything she'd endured to get here.